feared and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Hey, welcome in everybody to the Chasing the Pennant podcast. I am your host Borek tonight, and I'm joined by the wonderful Biscuit. As right now our Phillies are up 6-2 on the scoreboard, as it's in the bottom of the eighth inning going into now as we record this on Tuesday night. How you doing, Biscuit?
I'm doing pretty well. The Phillies, I believe, have a 4-run lead at the moment. Hector the Protector is in the game, and the Phillies bullpen, other than Hembry's outing, has been pretty solid tonight, so hopefully they can get the last 6 outs and my night doesn't go to complete chaos.
Yeah, and he had a very good first outing, so Hembry did. So that's a good place to start since that's the moves we made coming into this week. We acquired Heath Hembry and, of course, Brandon Workman for Connor Seabold, who's a guy I always liked, and then Nick Pivetta, who, if your name's not Jack Fritz, I think most people wanted out of Philly. So that trade happened, and then the David Hale trade was for Addison Russ, who's an analytics darling. We'll see what he becomes as an actual pitcher in the bigs, but that's the way to describe him in Addison Russ. So what do you think of those moves, and do you think they're actually going to help us make the adjustments we need going forward in this bullpen?
Well, I'll start with David Hale. I guess it's a fine move. I don't see why Addison Russ really didn't get an opportunity to come up and maybe throw a few innings for the Phillies this year. Obviously, he couldn't have been worse than what we witnessed, so I don't get why he was never given an opportunity specifically of how well he pitched in the minor leagues. And I don't know, it just feels like for what David Hale is, he only pitched 6 innings so far this year, albeit they weren't complete garbage. But at the same time, I don't think you're getting anything special. So it really just felt like an emergency move for me. In terms of Hembry and Workman, we've talked about this really since the start of the season at this point, what this team can do to fix their bullpen. And I guess if it's making these types of trades that aren't really, in favor of the Phillies, yes, they got something they need in return, but, Workman's set to hit the open market after this season. You're only getting him for how many games? About a little more than 30 games at this point. It's a fine trade, but you also have to consider you lost a really good prospect in Connor Seabold as well. So it's kind of frustrating and everything with the, Phillies needing more money, so they had to sweeten the deal to stay under the luxury tax.
I also think I think I see what Shane was saying there. I think they also had to do that because Hembry has an extra year of control. So you were trading for one pitcher that's expiring, but you're trading for another pitcher that actually has next year. I don't think Nick Pivetta, with his inconsistencies, was going to cut it as 1 for 2. I don't think that was going to work.
Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, Workman's the real pitcher in the deal. Nothing against Hembry, but I think Workman and his work as a back-end reliever is what really drew the Phillies to make the trade with Boston. Not that Hembry's a bad pitcher necessarily, but I think, long-term, the guy that we really wanted is not going to be with the Phillies for a very long time. And to give up a guy like Connor Seabold, whose ceiling was either back-end reliever or a mid-rotation starter. I don't know. You look at the Phillies starting pitching right now, and though it's, not been perfect this season, you got to think down the line, sure, you have Nola Wheeler and Spencer Howard, but afterwards, everyone's still really a toss-up. Jake Arrieta, God willing, will not be here next season. You don't have Nick Pivetta anymore to rely on. You don't have Vince Velasquez. It seems like his role is now with the bullpen. So in terms of starting pitching, it seems like Eflin still is a spot for now. But I wouldn't be surprised if they try to get someone, in free agency or maybe even at this deadline as someone who could be a back-end starter and eat some innings down the stretch for the Phillies.
Yeah, there's definitely some options there. I know the Phillies have had interest in, I don't know if he's still banged up, but Danny Duffy in the past.
Hmm.
So they've been rumored to move him again. You do have him for next year though, for I think it's about 13 million bucks. So you have to want to pay over 10 million bucks for him for next year as well when you make that trade. But if you're willing to do that, then that's a possibility. But if the Cubs were bad, they would have had a lot of pitchers to move, but they ended up being a good team this year. So
Hmm.
but I think Workman, yeah, he's a guy you got him for a short period of time. That's why he's probably gonna have to work this year, unless if Glenn Tech actually resigns him. Um, Hembry has the extra year. I do think that's probably why Boston asked for Seabold, and on top of asking for Hembry, you were also asking for money. So
Hmm.
there's no chance they were going to just take Nick Pivetta. So you had to give an extra asset there, and that's just what it ended up being. And I hope that it works out. I mean, Hall's a guy, he pitched one of his first games was against our beloved Phillies, 6 innings, 1 run, I believe it was. He barely gave up anything against us, and he had a great debut. It was either his debut or one of his first few games against us in his career back in the old Brave Stadium. So that hopefully we see somewhere between that and his career, which this year, if it's a 3 ERA, if you can pitch around that, that's not bad for this bullpen, obviously. You have an ERA in around the 8s or 9s for a lot of these guys that were given chances. So if you can pitch around that, that's fine. I think you got him mostly because he can eat you innings out of the
Hmm.
pen. He's a guy that's a former starter. And that's also why you got Hembre, who has next year of control, because he's a guy that normally for Boston would give you 1 1/3, 2 innings, and you would push through that 1 1/3, 2 innings. So I think you got both of them because they're not a 1 inning reliever, and you need so much help in that bullpen. You figure, well, 2 guys that can go more than 1 inning would be more helpful than 2 guys that are just good for 1 inning. So that could be the logic.
I mean, look, the Phillies bullpen has been so horrifically bad. Um, it's not even worth sitting here and looking up the numbers. Everyone knows it's awful. Every game that they've had a lead in, like their last several games, they've blown the lead late in games. They needed to do something. And to be honest, I think, Matt Klentak realizes that he might really now be on the hot seat. They had Gabe as the scapegoat last year, and they, fired the whole coaching staff. So it really felt like they had somewhere to place the blame. And that really carried over on the player side as well. They kind of talked about that in spring training, saying, they weren't happy. A lot of pitchers not being happy with, the pitching coach. And I think that now that oh goodness, I just saw the last out, or they're taking Naris out of the game, and I'm so sorry, Bork, I lost my train of thought. But my point being is that now the Phillies really need help, and I think that's why you're seeing these types of trades happen.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. But to stick with the pitching for now, Arrieta had, which we have to remember, the last game against Boston was because Reach screwed up at first, which threw off that inning too at the beginning
Hmm.
of that inning. So that kind of was a throw off where the game prior was a game he blew up entirely in that 1 inning. So this game he obviously bounced back before the rain delay. I believe it was 5 exactly. He got in before. Yeah, 5 exactly. 3 hits, 1 run, 1 earned, a walk, and a strikeout. Obviously, the one he gave up was that one homer to Trey Turner early on, and then he settled in from that. So I think that's probably better to see from Arrieta, to see him get through 5 after he gave that up in the first, because he settled into the outing and pitched well. But what do you think?
I mean, look, it's always this tale of Jake Arrieta. I feel like the last 2 years, he started the season pretty well. Everyone was pretty confident in him to put up at least respectable numbers. And then we saw him kind of plateau into what we see Jake Arrieta now as a guy who just doesn't miss bats. And when, his pitch is flying through the strike zone, batters are going to capitalize. And you saw a different Jake Arrieta tonight than the one you've seen in previous starts. But at the same time, I'm not sold. I think that this is a Nats team that, though just did win the World Series and though is very cocky and thinks that their, God-given talent on this planet is to beat the Philadelphia Phillies, or at least that's what their social media wants you to think. But it's one start. I need to see it for a couple more to be back in on Jake Arrieta. And that's kind of my mantra with the team as well. They could win tonight, or they could win another 3-4 games. But the bottom line is, you got to get well over 500. And with the stretch that you're in right now, facing the Nationals and Braves, and I believe the Nats again, like, it's now or never with this team. And like I said, that goes back to the moves you're seeing with Workman, Hale, and Hembree. It really just comes down to this team finally, and I hate just using this phrase, but they got to go on a run. And that's where we're at right now.
No, they definitely do. I mean, I think with Arrieta, like I said, when you're a high-stakes, high-emotion pitcher, and you have that crap happen at the start of an inning, like kind of Carlos Zambrano, that's going to automatically throw those emotion-driven pitchers off. So, I mean, that's on Arrieta. You have to bounce back and pick up your fielder, but it's also on Reese for not being able to make a simple play in that Boston game. So the first outing is where he really screwed it up, the outing prior, 2 outings ago. But, I mean, I think he's going to pitch around where he's at. I think he'll pitch to at least a 4 this year, and then he might show back to where he was before. So if he can pitch into at least a 4 and Howard steps up more and we take the leash off of him, then we should still be okay in the starting rotation. It's just the coaching staff has to eventually, in a short season, take the leash off of Spencer Howard as well.
To that point, the thing with Spencer Howard, I don't think there's necessarily much of a leash. They're letting him throw, about 70 to 90 pitches, I think, every other outing. Like, he's going up there with his pitch count. I just don't think he has the gas yet. I don't think he has the ability to go that deep into games, which is, one of the reasons I tossed, I believe, on a podcast before, the notion of him and Vinny maybe piggybacking starts, just because he can be so dominant for the first 3, 4, maybe 5 innings, depending on pitch count. But trying to get really through that third time through the lineup, I just don't think he has the ability to do that just quite yet. But, you're right. You need more from him. You need him to be able to go deeper into games. As of right now, like I said, with the, bullpen being as bad as it's been, the rotation faults haven't really been talked about too much. But when you really look at it, outside of Aaron Nola and Wheeler, the pitching really hasn't been that good, especially as of late.
Yeah, that's true. And, I mean, I think Wheeler and Nola, they're going to be, I mean, we thought at the beginning of the season, the carrying anchors of our staff, and then whoever mixed in as the third guy that stepped up. So we haven't really got that full third guy to step up yet. So we'll see still who that is. But in the bullpen, obviously, Mr. Shakes out there in Blake Parker has been doing his thing. So, I mean, that's kind of been our anchor out there.
We call him, me and my girlfriend call him Twitch. We call him the Twitch because he's always moving.
Yeah, no, that's another good nickname. But in terms of right now, if you had to pick, obviously this is not a consistent season for us so far before we go into what we think they're doing these next couple games, as hopefully the Phillies wrap up in this final inning as we're on the podcast, this game tonight. What do you think of, who would you put as your offensive team MVP to this point of the season thus far? And then after that, who would you put as your pitching, which is a much harder question? MVP, because of how close the guys are this far to your pitching MVP.
Oh, gosh. There's 3 guys that obviously come to mind right off the bat. And you know what? I'll put it to you this way. You mentioned this to me earlier as a question that you were going to ask me, and the first guy who kind of came to my mind who I was considering was Alec Boehm. I think since he's come up, like, he's the bat I think this team kind of needed. I really don't have that many qualms about the offense. Sure, it might be nice to get kind of like one more middle of the lineup bat, but I think Boehm, in terms of just keeping the line moving and even getting clutch hits, he's been phenomenal. And ran about Alec Boehm. The guy I'm going to go with, though, is JT Realmuto. love Bryce, and Bryce has been awesome, but look at the kind of season JT's having. If you didn't think this guy was the best catcher in baseball before the start of this season, I hope you realize you're wrong now. He's just been really absolutely phenomenal for this team. I feel like still gets a lot of flack for being in the cleanup spot, but his numbers there have been very, very productive. And really, it's been that way ever since the first, 3 games of the series, where it looked like it might be a mistake putting him in that cleanup spot. But he's been phenomenal there this season. And I think how the lineup is constructed now that you're seeing more of a pickup from other guys as well, it's just really fueling that, on base for those middle guys like Harper or Didi or JT to feast. And like I said, this lineup looks really efficient now. And I think JT is a really big part of that reason why.
Yeah, he's really stepped up. He had a hilarious home run as we record this on Tuesday night before the rain delay kicked in Nationals Park tonight, where it bounced off of the top of the wall, and then Adam Eden tried to grab it as it was going over the wall, off the top of the wall, and missed. So that was a pretty funny highlight if people haven't seen that. But yeah, I would say it has to be JT. The other MVP, if you're going to pick a second person so we don't pick the same, would obviously be Harper. So that would be Harper's been doing his thing and continuing to kill it. He has the home runs, he has the average this year, and he has the on base. So he's doing it all this year, along with looking pretty solid in the field, continuing as well since he came over here. So I would go with Harper for not picking the same person. Yeah.
I will say this too. I think if JT Realmuto, obviously I think there's going to be people who have better offensive numbers by the end of the season than he does. But if he continues at this level of production, I think there's a pretty solid chance that he becomes our NL MVP. I love Bryce, and I think he'll be in the conversation too. But I just think what JT has done so far this year, and especially if you look back at catchers' numbers in general, he just really exceeds every single catcher offensively. His production, if it was not with this team, would be detrimental. Another point, sign him. But he's just been amazing. Like, I'm just looking at the numbers now, the 9 home runs, on base percentage in the high 340s, 960 OPS, 151 OPS plus. Jesus, like, you got to pay this guy.
Yeah.
But
no, yeah, they have to pay him soon, and hopefully they get to that because there's still been no signs they're talking. So
I am getting a little concerned. I was not one to get concerned, especially I feel like everyone hit a panic button when Matt Klentak did that presser and made, the whole comment about the landscape changing, and that's the reason why there isn't any dialogue. But I'm starting to get concerned. They better have a really good idea of what they're going to do with the money you can use to re-sign JT to save this team or to make this team what it needs to be. Because if they don't sign JT and we don't really get any type of player that supplements what he brings to the table, both offensively and defensively, that's going to be terrible. That's going to be ridiculous. And that's going to be unfair. Unfair to the, Bryce Harper, who you kind of use JT as a way to coerce him to come here or maybe sweeten his idea of Philadelphia. And it's going to be unfair to the fans as well, who literally have been clamoring over this guy since you signed him. So I'm getting concerned, Borek, to say the least.
yeah, it's going to be interesting. I know some GMs and players take a very handoff approach during the season and those types of things. JT did say, though, he would be willing to talk. So we know he's not taking a handoff approach. And if Klentak is, well, he hasn't done any big signings in terms of re-signings in the off-season months as of yet. So it would be a concern of, well, what's he waiting for? So that's more, I understand you might want to be hands-off and not get all involved with it during the season, but still, I mean, eventually you kind of have to do what you have to do. But I mean,
I still think it'll get done for the sole reason of this team. it's frustrating to say, but I still don't think they're that far away from being a contender. Obviously, if you have to ask me right now if there's a chance that I think they'll still make the playoffs, I'm going to say no, just because I don't think they're there quite yet. But I do think this season is being used as a way of more of like a learning block to seeing what you really need, what still, can be developed in terms of young talent. And I think that's, we're going to see decisions that are being made, like with Nick Pivetta being shipped off, Vince Velasquez now permanently in the bullpen. Like a lot of the guys, and you saw it last year with Cesar and Maikel Franco, a lot of the guys who were given all of these opportunities are really going to start being phased out. And I think with that being said as well, you're going to be able to start supplementing that former players with more talent. And it all really goes back to, getting JT back in pinstripes next season, and then using the money you're losing from, guys like Arrieta, Robertson, and just trying to kind of rebuild, I guess, the back of that bullpen.
Yeah, that makes sense. That obviously has to be what your big gets are for the offseason. And then if Workman works out, no pun intended, you're probably going to want to re-sign him. So, but moving on, for our Phillies, I don't know if you had just any weekly points. I figure this would be a good thing to ask to, like, what maybe your hot take or biggest take of the week on the team has been since we were last on the podcast.
You know what? I got a pretty solid take. I believe he does hit free agency this offseason, and he's someone I would like to see back. He's not JT, even though I want JT back. He's not Didi, even though I want Didi back. It is the left-handed pitcher, Jose Alvarez. Can I tell you that I think, obviously, he's been pretty successful with us since last season. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but I know he's pitched rather well since joining the Phillies at the beginning of the 2019 season. But even to talk about that play the other day that he made in the game, I believe it was against the Toronto Blue Jays at the game in Buffalo, where he was hit in the groin area and still made that play. Like, that just takes unbelievable athleticism and really, I guess, I don't know if guts is the right word, but to just kind of keep going and make that play, like, what a stoic moment for a guy.
Yeah, last year I pulled up his numbers. He finished with a 134 ERA plus a 1.42. But that's because he got a little cold as the season went on. Those numbers are a little deceiving. He had a pretty good run, and then he started this year in the 8 games with a 1.42. So, yeah, he's been a good pitcher for us, other than when he's put in the 9th inning, but that was a stupid decision to begin with. So last season. So that's really what I agree with you. He's another guy we should re-sign. Another guy you mentioned was going to be my take because he keeps doing well. He has the connections with Girardi. You should sign Didi if he keeps doing his thing. He's continuing to look good at the other than one play, fielding the shortstop position, and he continues to look good at the plate and kind of coming back to where he was before that injury. It seems he's hitting pretty well, but I would still say medium level and shortly, because it's not like he's hot as he used to be when he was on the Yankees yet. He's not at that level he was when he was in his peak All-Star season with the Yankees, but he's been doing well, and I think we should definitely keep him around as well. But if you are watching any of these baseball games or basketball or hockey playoffs, whatever you enjoy watching, and you enjoy stuffing your face while watching, please hit our man Asian Rob at Just Foods. If you're in the Bucks County area, be sure to visit Asian Rob. Ask for the chef special. Get all your catering needs for events, or even just take a takeout meal. It will not disappoint you. It will be a great party for your mouth. You can get them at 215-794-3663, 215-794-3663, or 215-794-FOOD. And again, if you're in the Bucks County area, ask for a man, Agent Rob. Ask for the chef special. Get your perfect catering needs, and also a takeout meal. and your mouth would not be disappointed. It will be having a party with you. 215-794-3663. So back to the Phillies talk. Right now, we are in the top of the ninth inning as we record this, up 6-2 with second and third and 2 outs with Gene Segura at the plate. So as this game, we hopefully are able to close out. Oh, now it's bases loaded after a walk. So now it's bases loaded with Gene Segura at the plate. Correction. So,
I was going to say, I thought Didi was up, but you were a second before me, so I was like,
yeah.
okay.
So,
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Make him pay, Gene. Make him pay, Gene.
Yeah, that would be huge if he can get going. He's not even good in his career with the bases loaded. That's always been his one struggling point. But as we wrap up this one, I think it will be good to obviously talk about the 2 games that will come up before our Thursday edition of Chasing the Pennant, which is tomorrow. We got a great pitching matchup of Aaron Nola versus Patrick Corbin. And what do you think of tomorrow's game? Again, it's an earlier start at 6:05 for those that do not know. And against that big-time pitching matchup of Nola and Corbin, who would you give the nod to there, and how do you think that could possibly go?
You know, it's either going to be one of those games that's going to be either a high score or it's going to be a pitching duel through and through. And you're hoping it's the second one there because Nola really got roughed up in the Braves start. It wasn't fun seeing him struggle, especially because of how dominant he's been of late. So you really hope he has a real nice bounce back start tomorrow. And look, the Phillies need to just keep winning. I think this is the most crucial stretch. And as we approach the August 31st trade deadline, I think these next 5 to 7 games or so is what's going to determine what the Phillies really continue to do. I don't know if they'll go on a major fire sale, but I do think they'll try to trade some assets away if it's very clear that this team is not going to have any shot to contend throughout the final 30 games. But I hope, I'm going to say Nola. I'm going to say win tomorrow just because I think Nola has a bounce back start. Now I know that that's not going to happen because I spoke it into existence and the Phillies are going to lose the next 2 games. But I'm going to go Nola for now. And the next, we got Spencer Howard and Max Scherzer.
Spencer and Max, yeah.
That's going to be a fun one. And who knows, maybe Spencer Howard shortens his own leash. He's able to kind of get through maybe 5 or 6, get a little deeper into the game. He looked really good in his last start. Obviously, I believe he still only pitched, a little less than 4 innings. It was a dominant, 3.2 innings, but you still do need more from him.
Yeah, no, that's entirely true. You do need more from him, but I just think this team just needs to we're scoring. You hinted at it earlier. Our offense hasn't been an issue. It hasn't been an issue again tonight as Mean Gene gives us 2 more runs on the night to make it 8-2 now.
I'm about to see it.
It hasn't been an issue again tonight as we record this on Tuesday. Again, I believe that Aaron Nola will have a bounce back start. He didn't have a flat pitching start. He just didn't have good location. It wasn't like last year where all of a sudden things were going straight again and he didn't have any of the movement like in last year. So I think this is similar to how when he was his hot self, every good pitcher has a off start. It just happens. We've seen Kershaw have him during his peaks of his career. Every pitcher has an off start. Scherzer's had a whole off start to this season. So that's why I agree with you. I think Nola, I will lean a little towards him. Obviously, Corbin's a great pitcher. But again, I want to see Scotty continue to hit against Corbin because Andrew brought that up when we did our podcast for True Philadelphians. And Scotty hits great off of all these pitchers, and all of them, other than Fetty, have a good career track record. So it's kind of funny that he hasn't been the most consistent hitter in the majors, yet he has over a 300 clip against Corbin, over a 300 clip against Scherzer, and then just rocks Eric Fetty since he's been in the league. So that's a guy I look to continue having a good series. I know he wrapped that 1 double over Soto's head tonight on jumping on the first pitch, which is what you love to see as well. So I'll agree with you, Nola, on that second game.
Look, like I said before, the Phillies rotation hasn't been that great as of late, and that really hasn't been brought to anyone's attention, or at least talked about in a mass way, just because of how crappy the bullpen's been. But you really got to turn the tide here. And I'm talking about, I think Nola's going to be fine. Wheeler's been excellent. Both of them are not the guys I'm talking about here, but everyone like Arrieta and beyond, the entire bullpen, it's go time. And especially with the starters, like you've been fine. You've been fine, but you really can't let it get out of hand now, because now you already have one complete facet of your team that you're worrying about. Don't make it another. The bullpen needs as much help as it can get, and I think that's going to also continue to be the focus. But at the same time, if these starters obviously had a good one from Jake tonight with the 5 innings of 1-run ball, but if Spencer Howard can't get out of the 3rd or 4th inning, and Vince Velasquez, as much as he's striking out people now, Mr. Vinny, or excuse me, did I say Vince Velasquez? I meant Zach Eflin.
I think you meant Eflin, right? Yeah.
I meant Eflin. I meant Eflin, not Vinny V. If Eflin, even though he's striking people out now, he still really isn't missing that many bats as well. So
no, other than those strikeouts, yeah, when he doesn't strike people out.
When he's not striking people out, they're making contact, and you got to think you don't want to have to worry about somewhere else that you have to tweak. The lineup's been the most consistent thing, and what I've liked most about the lineup is that it was JT and Bryce. It was their show at first, but I think now as we're really starting to turn the halfway mark, hit the halfway point here. You're seeing everyone kind of come together, and I think that could be really beneficial for this team if they are going to contend down the stretch.
Yeah, I agree. Teams that contend and actually make a run, it's like a puzzle. All the pieces kind of fall together and come into place, and that's how you're able to make those runs. And these Phillies team, obviously that has not happened yet. So we look to see that happen in the next couple weeks as we do our podcast. But I think we're pretty much coming to our full pod here. I don't know if you had any closing final point. Well, I know you do, but before that final point, if you had any closing final point.
Well, I just realized, Borek, we were going to do offensive MVP and obviously
pitching, and we didn't even talk about the pitching.
And we didn't even talk about the pitching. So real brief, I'm going to go with Nola, obviously. Look, there was so much talk after last season, even though it wasn't a completely bad year. He still wasn't as great as he was in 2018 when he was a top, 3 pitcher in baseball that year. He's been back to that level. He's been so exciting to watch. Obviously, the last start, I think, kind of nicks his chances, but if he kind of still continues down the pathway that he's been on, you're looking at a guy I do think has a serious shot of winning the National League Cy Young Award this season. So you can't get much better than that. And Wheeler's been a great complementary piece to him. Both of them have really been aces in their own right. But Nola just looking like he still has that 2018 stuff in him is huge for this team this year.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I would say it's Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola would be the guy with his movement. But with how well Wheeler complemented in his 3-0, again, to talk about someone else, he's been dominating a 110 whip, 20 strikeouts, which is not a lot of strikeouts for Wheeler. He's actually been pitching to contact and ground balls really well this year, which has actually been nice to see because he's been able to get outs in less pitches, which has got him to be our pitcher that goes the deepest in the game so far. So I'll give it to him so we don't say two people, and also because he's been our guy to go the deepest into games, getting those ground balls and contact.
A lot of people were talking about him not striking out that many batters, and I guess it wasn't really like a major topic, but a lot of people were addressing it kind of as a concern that, he isn't really getting a lot of swing and misses. He's not striking that many guys out. But as a Phillies fan who's watched some pretty crappy baseball over the last several years, a pitcher who's pitching as well as he's been, and even though he's not striking guys out, he's still, getting outs and pitching pretty deep into games. Do you think I care if he's not striking guys out?
That's better because when you strike guys out and your strikeouts go up, you tend to pitch more.
Yeah, your count
goes
goes up.
Exactly, yeah.
Your count goes up. And, sure, you could have those nights when you're just so on. And even if the pitch count is a little on the higher side, you're still able to get real deep into the game. But he's just been so efficient. And think about the double plays as well and the defense behind him. It's been phenomenal. And it's one of those things that you didn't really know what kind of pitcher you were going to get with Zach Wheeler. Obviously, he's got the stuff to be really dominant, as we've seen so far, but he's really been better than advertised. And at the same time, everyone thought the deal that we gave him was astronomical, with him getting over I believe it's like his annual average value is about 21, 22 million, but he's pitched out, he's earned that so far, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and then I'll always turn it over. We know you have a great final point, unless if you added another tweak to it like you do some weeks as well. But what's your final point, Biscuit?
Sign Jacob Tyler Realmuto, All-Star, future Hall of Famer, and potentially your 2020 National League MVP award winner. Klentak, I know your job's in trouble, and I know you're scared, man. I would be scared too. I would be scared too, man. You've done a really bad job. You've done a disservice to Philadelphia, my guy. But you could make it a little bit better if you sign JT Realmuto. Do it tonight. Do it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Bruins in hockey signed their goalie during a period break. Wow, in a bubble. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure they should be able to sign JT. They're not in a bubble. And so, yeah, they should be able to get that done. I completely agree. My final point is our pitching continues with the two aces to look good, and I love the addition of Wheeler when we got it. I was one of our guys that was very high on it from the get-go on our team. And I love how those guys continue to pitch stats that, like you said, yeah, Noah, is going to be up there in the Cy Young. But Wheeler is also going to be up there if he keeps pitching like this as well. And you're going to have two guys high in the Cy Young rankings, which is going to be great to see for this Phillies team that hasn't had that great pitching since the four aces. So, but unless if you had any final points, I think that's pretty much wrapping up our night of the Chasing the Pennant podcast. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to us tonight. If you like what you're hearing, again, please always like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast. And now we're sending it off to the Jackdaws to close us out. If you love our intro and outro music, they're an Irish folk rock band, and they're an awesome Irish folk rock band you can check out on Spotify and also the jackdaws.com or the Patreon. So please check them out. They do great things. They also, as Shane says, have that cooking show now. So check them out over there as well. But www.thejackdaws.com. And you can also find them on Patreon by searching The Jackdaws. So have a great, safe, and pleasant night, everybody. For Chasing the Pennant podcast, I am Borek with Biscuit. Let's close this out, Blake Parker, and get the win on this Tuesday night as we are recording and move into tomorrow and build some momentum against this Nationals team. Peace out, everybody.
Through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with a win. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and so jiggle my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.